Coming up on AEA Amplified, let's meet the new chairman of the AEA Board of Directors, Mike Berryhill.
From the Aircraft Electronics Association, this is AEA Amplified, a podcast for aviation's technology experts, with your host, Jeff Hill.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of AEA Amplified, sponsored by Avionics News. Of course, it is the AEA's monthly magazine, available in 3 different platforms. That would be print and online at avionicsnews.net, as well as the mobile apps for iOS, Apple, and Android devices. Today is Thursday, April the 24th, 2025, and it is my honor to welcome in my good friend and a good friend of the AEA's that most people are certainly familiar with, and that's Mr. Mike Berryhill. He was recently elected as the AEA's new chairman of the board of directors, and of course, he is a senior maintenance trainer at Cirrus Aircraft. So, Mike, first of all, welcome to the show, and gosh, it's hard to believe that it's already been a month since we were in Phoenix.
You're right.
For the AEA convention, but if you could, I just want to take people back to the speech that you gave in Phoenix, where you talked about your personal experience, and it was a great speech, very motivational speech for me, and I know for so many others, on kind of how you got started with the aviation bug, how you caught it. And so for our podcast listeners who maybe did not have an opportunity to hear that story in person in Phoenix, I know you mentioned a Navy recruiter that inspired you with an opportunity to work on airplanes many years ago. I think that was back in 1990. But just start us off a little bit by telling us about that life-altering event that you experienced, and then maybe just walk us through your aviation career up to this point.
Jeff, thanks. Thanks for having me. And Jeff, I should start by wishing you a happy birthday. I know the other day, just a couple of days ago, was your
Thank you
birthday.
very much.
I want to start by saying happy birthday. So the speech in Phoenix, I was inspired by having met Aaliyah Pittman a year before in Dallas. And so I wanted to tell that story. And in the process of telling Aaliyah's story, I was reminded of that day all those years ago, whenever the Navy slotted me to be basically what I am today, an aircraft electronics technician. So my rate in the Navy was an AT. And so I actually joined the Navy. I was going to be in the submarine fleet. And so in week 5 at boot camp, they brought us into the recruiters. They brought us into to the folks that give us jobs. The name of the guy's job name is escaping me. Anyway, I go to see that guy, and he sits me down. And he says, "Okay, we've got you slated to be in submarines." And he shows me a couple of other jobs. So what he's doing, he's a classification specialist, right? So what he's doing is he's trying to fill billets. And so in that moment, I didn't realize it at the time, but in that moment, what was occurring was he had plenty of submariners, and what he really needed was some of these other jobs. And I don't remember all of the jobs that he offered me that day, but one of them was AT, which I had looked at before I actually signed my contract to go to the Navy. Anyway, one of the sheets that classification guy showed me was AT. And so I looked at that job and I read through that job, and I had some basic electronics and electricity in the Navy. I meant in high school before the Navy, and it kind of came pretty easy to me, and that's why I scored well on the ASVAB. So I told that fella that day, I said, "Yeah, I think I would love that job." And he said, "Well, okay, so that means you're not going to be in the submarines anymore." And I said, "Well, okay, I'm not, nothing's pulling on me to go to that thing." So in that moment, he changed my career from being in submarines to being an aircraft guy. And I didn't realize it as it was occurring. I didn't realize truly what was going to happen. But that literally changed my entire career, right? So for the next 6 years, I spent as an aircraft electronics technician. Obviously, I spent a year in school, but that year in school, I was all electronics and electricity basically all the time. And I got the opportunity to go to a second school. I signed a contract for 6 years. So that meant I left boot camp, went to the first school, A school, and then I went to a school called AFTA. It was the B school. And that was an interesting transition for me. I did well in basic electronics and electricity, but I also did well in that B school, that AFTA school. And so that gave me an opportunity to pick my orders. I ran off and went to the West Coast. I was in a thing called COP debt, which basically meant that instead of being attached to a squadron or being attached to a boat, I was attached to the to the CAG, or the carrier air group. So whenever the airplanes were on the beach, I was on the beach. When the
Hmm.
airplanes were on the boat, I was on the boat, but I was eye level, which meant I was working on boxes. Okay, so I spent 5 years working on boxes. I spent a couple of tours on the aircraft carrier, 1991 and 1993, which of course were Gulf War. So that gave me a couple of tours during in the Persian Gulf on aircraft carriers during the Persian Gulf War. So I lived on top of a nuclear reactor and underneath an airport,
Wow.
which is a pretty good job. And I knew that I was going to be pretty good at this. Well, that brings me to time to reenlist, and at that moment, they gave me a couple of other jobs. So I'm back in front of the classification guy, and that guy says, "Okay, we want you to be a weather guesser, what the Navy calls an AG. That we want you to be an AO, uh, or we want you to be a sonar guy, an AW." And sonar guys have to jump out of perfectly good helicopters and be a rescue swimmer. And at 25, yeah, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not for me. AO, I'm reminded of Bugs Bunny hitting the ordnance with the hammer at
Yes.
Dud. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to be an AO. And weather guesser, I think I would have been a good radio weather guy.
Yeah, without
I
a
think
doubt.
I could have
Absolutely.
I think I could have done that job. Anyway, I told him no. I'm like, no, 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 no. If you guys, if y'all will look at my career here, I'm actually pretty good at this job. And they didn't offer me in that moment, they didn't offer me a job. My senior chief at the time, he said to me, he said, Berryhill, why are you getting out of the Navy? You're good at this, you should stay. And I said, well, they want me to change jobs, chief. And he said, okay, who'd you talk to? So he actually came back a couple of weeks later and he offered me a job as an AT. And I said, look, I'm too close to getting out. So that was one of those moments that I think back on, that I'm like, I wonder what would have happened if, number one, if I had taken that weather guesser job, because I think I could have been a good radio weather guy. Uh, but also, what would have happened if I would have taken him up on the offer and stayed in the Navy? At that point, right, you do 4 more, you're at 10 now. So you're making a decision for basically the 20-year career at that very first reenlistment. And so that was part of the reason why I elected to go home. Anyway, I told that story to bring us to this one, and that is I decided to get out. And when I got out, I moved to Colorado. I worked in cell phones and photocopiers for a while, and I found a job in the newspaper,
Hmm.
and they were looking for an avionics instructor at the 147 in up at the north end of the Denver metro. It was at the school was called Colorado Aerotech, and they were looking for an avionics instructor. And so I applied for the job. And at the interview, I distinctly remember him handing me the syllabus. I'll never forget this. Guy by the name of Dan Darren. He handed me the syllabus and he said, "Do you think you can teach this course?" And my head started nodding yes, before my brain could scream at me, "No." So I the guy offered me a job, and of course he needed me right away because he had an instructor quit, and so it was one of those really fast transitions. And I look back on it, and man, that changed my career almost forever, because in that moment I had to start teaching basic electronics and electricity. I don't know. Nobody ever really told me that I could be a teacher. Nobody ever told me that I could speak publicly, but that, man, that was one of those moments, right, where uh, you look back on it and you're like, man, am I glad that opportunity came along. Well, okay, so that put me at Colorado Aerotech teaching basic electronics and electricity, and I did that. I think it was about 3 years, and then I went to work for a company called Flight Options. They're a fractional business jet model, and I worked for them for a year, maybe a year and a half. It didn't last very long because they had just merged with a company called Travel Air, I think was the name of that company, and so they were kind of on the skids. Things were going pretty rough for them. And I saw the writing on the wall. So before they closed that maintenance facility, I ended up taking a job at Cessna. I moved to Wichita. I worked for Cessna at the Citation Service Center in Wichita. And I worked on, it was kind of interesting how it's interesting how that career went. I started off as an install guy. We were doing GPWiz mods and
Hmm.
RVSM mods. And so I was on the mod crew. And then I ended up working Citation 10s, XLs, and the 650. And then the Sovereign ultimately came along. And the reason that's important to this story is because I spent some time at the production facility at Cessna. And the production facility is different from the line maintenance of the Citation Service Center. And so I really got to dip my toe in that pool. Not very long, but I got to do it enough to realize that, how different. I realized how different it truly was.
Right.
And so that put me in a place where it was just time to go do the next thing, and that was Garmin. And
Hmm.
I actually had two guys that I had worked with at Cessna that had gone to Garmin, and so I applied to be a field service guy at Garmin, sent them my resume, and the hiring manager called me and said, look, we're trying to hire a maintenance trainer. Would you be interested in a maintenance training job? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm sure I would. So he forwarded my resume to the hiring manager for the maintenance training. He set me up for my interview. And um, I was originally going to do, I like to tell this story. I was originally going to do a lecture, right? Because they're going to hire me as a trainer. They want to see me teach. So they said, we want you to do, 15, 20 minutes on whatever topic you pick. Okay. I didn't know what I was going to pick. So I decided I was going to do uh, digital electronics, the AND gate, the OR gate, the NOR gate, and kind of how these work, because it was a topic that I had taught at the school, and I knew it pretty well, and so I thought I could. So I drummed that thing up. I don't know. I probably had 4 or 5 hours. It's been a long time ago, but I had quite a bit of time in developing those slides. In what it was PowerPoint, I think, but it was it was rough. And then I found out that the HR hiring manager was going to be in the lecture, and I scrapped it. I threw it all away, and I decided that I was going to train on the ILS and how an airplane finds the airport whenever it's what we all know is IMC or instrument conditions.
Hmm.
And in my mind's eye, I figured, if I'm doing logic gates, I'm going to lose her quick. But if I can teach her how an airport lands whenever you can't find the airport, I thought I'm going to nail her and convince her, and I'll risk it with the actual hiring manager and the director. And so my lecture was on the ILS and how to find the airport in IMC. Um, and I've heard it said a couple of times. A guy by the name of Randy Stewart, he said, you nailed it. And so that's part of the reason why I tell that story, because he complimented me several times telling that story. So anyway, that got me hired at Garmin, and I
Hmm.
was Garmin's first maintenance trainer. They had a guy that was called a product trainer who was training on the pilot side, and I was the first maintenance trainer. And so it was 11 years at Garmin. I was in two different roles. I was in the product training role, maintenance training role, and in the field service. I moved over to the field service side to work the desk, work the emails, work the phone calls, figure out exactly what it is that's troubling the guys in the field. And all the while that I was at Garmin, I was lucky enough, I was blessed enough to get to work with AEA. And in 2007 was the first time I met Mike Adamson. He and I talked about this. We reminisce about this story commonly. We were at John Wayne Airport, across the street from John Wayne Airport
Hmm.
at the Hilton. There was smoke out on the hills from a fire in California. Uh, isn't that ironic? And so I met Mike, and I spent almost my entire career at Garmin doing AEA events along with my other jobs. So one of my collateral duties was doing AEA events,
Mhm.
and what a highlight, right? As I look back on that career, I imagine all the places I went and all the people that I met, and I mentioned that in the speech, right? I talked about the people that I've met from England to Australia, from the Netherlands to South Africa. I've met people from all over the globe, and in doing that, I leave out Brazil and South America, right? I mean,
Right.
Central America. In drawing and putting those maps, putting those dots on the map, I wasn't intentional to leave them out, but I've spent a lot of time in some of those places, and so it's uh, what a career. The AEA element of the career was unknown to me in that moment. I just, you just think you're going to be talking about avionics and you're going to
Right.
be in a classroom because you don't know. To you, the classroom is that classroom at the 147. And I had no idea how many places I would go and how many people I would meet. So, how many people I would meet. So, that's 11 years at Garmin. And in 2017, right at the end of
Mhm.
2017, I applied to go to work for Cirrus. The hiring manager got word to me through one of my, he's one of my mentors, frankly, Daryl, and said, "Hey, they're going to be hiring, and if you're interested, I'll mention your name." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, please tell them my name." So the hiring manager gives me a call and says, "I'm about to post this position if you're interested." And I had my resume in his inbox before we hung up the phone call, and that was one of those moments that you look back on that you just don't forget because we had this opportunity to go to Knoxville, and that's where I am today. I'm in the foothills of the Smokies,
Mhm.
just a couple of miles that way. Gorgeous, beautiful national park, a brand new Cirrus facility, and I got the opportunity to be one of the first, not early, but one of the first employees here at the Knoxville campus. Certainly the first field service guy here at the Knoxville campus, and so that was, gosh, I can't believe that was 2018. And in that moment, I remember the interview. I asked my hiring manager at the time, I said, if you'll let me run for the board of directors, I said, I bet I get elected. And I could just hear the mental conversation in his
Yeah.
head about, go ahead, kid, fill your boots, as the Aussies say. Um, you run. Well, let's see if you get elected. And all the while he's thinking, there's no way he gets elected to the board of directors. Well, so I threw my name in the hat and got elected to the board of directors in 2018 and began my career. I started in January of 2018 with Cirrus. And so I've done two roles here at Cirrus. I've been in field service, which is the reverse of my career at Garmin. I've done two roles. I did that career in field service, and then I did that now maintenance training. And so that's rolled me into a new role, kind of at the end of COVID 2021, as a maintenance trainer, and all the while I've been on the board. I've served as a co-director of the workforce committee. I've served as
Mhm.
the um, chair of the trusteeship committee, served as the vice chair, and then was blessed enough to be selected chairman and had my first convention in Phoenix. So I don't know how long we've been on here. 30 minutes
No,
later,
that's good.
I tell you, it's a long career, right? 30 years I've been doing this, and all the while, man, I've been having fun. People people say if you want to have a good career, do something you love. And boy, that's tough advice. If you listen to somebody like Mike Rowe, it's like, wait a minute, the work comes first. And I consider it a true blessing that I've had this opportunity to do something I've loved almost every single step of the way. It's never felt like work. It's always felt like fun. And go out to the hangar. What are you doing today? Well, I got to go to the hangar. Later today, I've got to fly to Duluth, and I get to go fly in a Vision jet. Man, it just doesn't get any better than this. So there it is. There's a recap of a little bit of the story about Aaliyah and then my career here at Cirrus and AEA.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a quick little side story. When I first met you was I think the spring of 2011. It's at the AEA convention in Reno, and you may not remember this, but uh, I knew how special you were and how passionate you were
Oh,
about the industry. I could just tell because that was the year where Garmin, if you recall, when you were working there, they introduced the GTN 650, 750, and they introduced that at the AEA convention. And I remember uh, one of your duties. You know, we all wear many hats, and but
yes,
you were keeping the doors locked and nobody could get into the room because we were going to have literally the fireworks inside that night at the big unveiling
isn't that funny?
to the repair stations, and you were tasked with
Right.
nobody could come in and see what was behind the curtain, so to speak, until that evening. And so that's how you don't remember that, but that's how I
You're
first got
right.
to meet you.
You're right, I
Um,
don't. But it's not the first time, nor is it the last time that I'll serve as a bouncer as one of my collateral duties.
Well, it was fun, and you were having fun with it, so it was
That's
a great
awesome.
day, certainly for the
That's great.
industry. All right, so Mike, I know you've been on the board of directors here at the AA for over 7 years, and had actually served as vice chairman for the last 2 or 3 years, I believe, under the leadership of Bill Hanft. But now that you become chairman, I know one of the things that you've been passionate about for an awfully long time is the fact that we have a shortage of skilled technicians in our industry. So in addition to being board chairman, you've also served, as you mentioned, you've worked on the AEA's Workforce Development Committee, and they've created some tools and solutions to help address the shortage. But just building on your board experience, what are some of the key opportunities that you see for the AEA to further enhance our workforce development initiatives?
The workforce committee has done an amazing job. We were we were just coming out of the strategic realignment, and we were standing that workforce committee up, and Dave Salvador came up with a really great idea to structure our workforce committee with a, a seed, a grow, a pick, and a maintain concept to our workforce initiatives. And it was, I remember in the moment when I heard it, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what this needed. And that set of initiatives continues today. So within each one of these segments of the workforce committee, we have several items going on. Uh, Danny Santiago is now chairing the workforce committee and doing an amazing job. He's working on picking a new co-chair. Mark Cody just recently stepped away, and so Danny's working on picking a new co-chair for our workforce committee, and that is going to bring us to our new leadership for the workforce committee. With regards to initiatives, we're working on the CAET,
Hmm.
the Certified Aircraft Electronics Technician, which is a transition from the AET, and I think that that's going to be a good thing. And one of the biggest differences, is that AEA is actually going to market that
Hmm.
certificate. And then I think the second big thing to go along with that is our goal with the AET is to align it to the shops, so that the shops see alignment between the certification and the technician whenever they show up. So those are the two big things that we're doing with the CAET. One of the other things that the workforce committee did was we 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 did something brand new at Phoenix called the skills competition, and it was a roaring success.
Hmm.
I actually just got off the phone with Chris Bergman yesterday, who was out at Pennsylvania College of Technology, uh, visiting with Matthew, the instructor that brought those technicians to the skills competition. And and I've got a great report from Chris that he was on site, and he has a couple of different leads for technicians to come and work for them at their shop, as well as some internship opportunities. And so this skills competition was the initiative, the kickstart to that relationship with Chris's organization and the skills competition and new technicians. And this is one of the things that we've got to overcome, is this opportunity, is this shortage of technicians, and this was an opportunity for us to do that. So the workforce committee continues to do some really, really heavy lifting that 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 I think is pointed right at directly at the problem, not it's not fluff and dander. It's real work that are bringing technicians to the industry.
So, speaking of some other committee work beyond workforce development, can you give the AA members who are listening here, an update on some of the priorities and the work that's taking place on the committee level, or maybe even the subcommittee level, and some of the AA members who are actually leading that work?
Yep. Tom Simon and Chuck Gallagher, Chuck Gallagher are leading the membership committee, and that committee, the goal of that committee is to find opportunities for AEA to improve member benefits to the associate member, to the shops, to the
Right.
member shops, so that they have a good return on their investment into the association. Look, I've been doing this several years now, 7, 8 years, and in my it's easy for me to convince a shop. To me, it sounds convincing. I feel
Hmm.
it's easy to convince a shop why being a member of AEA is so important. And I think that we're going to find some other opportunities in that membership committee. And one of the goals of that is to smooth the rough edges between the associate members of the association and the regular members of the association. And so they're continuing to do surveys to the membership and to the association to
Right.
meld these things together so that we're doing the work that is actually helping the regular member with their relationships with those
Right.
association members. And then Kevin Barton, man, huge shout out to Kevin. There has been some work going on, the Government Affairs Committee. There's been some work going on that's really kind of new, and I know that I'm not telling anybody anything new as I'm saying this, but it's new to us as an association. We've stood up a delegates subcommittee within the Government Affairs Committee, and the idea of this is to give these delegates an association where they can do their work and get feedback from folks like Rick Perry and other aviation authorities, so that they feel like they've got a home in an association and they've got a place where they can come and meet. And so we've now had 2 delegate meetings at the last 2 conventions. And so that work is ongoing and continues to grow. And what it's going to do is it's going to grow the membership of the association, because those delegates are going to become members. Ultimately, it's not a requirement. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh gosh, now I've got to join, don't let me push you away. Come join us today. Come meet with Kevin and the rest of the delegate subcommittee folks, and let us find out exactly how we can serve you, because we feel like that we've got an opportunity to serve that portion of the aviation community. And now what we have to do as an association is figure out how we're going to serve them.
And I might add a couple of things to those points. You mentioned the delegates
Great.
work, and our listeners can actually go back to the most recent podcast, which was with that delegates group, and you can learn more about all of the work that they are doing here in the archives of the podcast. And then also, you had mentioned the CAET, which was first publicly launched at the convention in Phoenix. There actually is a frequently asked questions page set up on the AA's website where you can learn a lot more about that, and that is at aea.net/CAET. So, Mike, moving on, I know, back in 2020 and 21, there during the time of COVID, it seems like you played a crucial role in the AEA's strategic planning initiative that was taking place at that time. And now that plan is being executed and well underway by the board, by the AEA staff, of course, under the leadership of our president and CEO, Mike Adamson. So now, as you step into the role as chairman, what is your overarching vision and some of your top priorities for the association in the years ahead?
That strategic plan was excellently executed by Mike. And I I've I've asked him about some of the impetus in his in his eye about what made him, what caused him. Was there something internal that caused him to go to that idea of a strategic plan for an association? And you know, at the end of the day, obviously he shared a lot with me, but at the end of the day, he said it was time. We were due for this
Hmm.
reorganization, and it's not really a reorganization, but it was a opportunity for us to look at the way that we're doing business, and
Hmm.
then ensure that the association met the demands of our members. And so whenever I say reorganization, it's not like we had a big structural change, but what we did is we made sure that our mission and our goals and our day-to-day efforts met those goals and met those requirements. And then we set some goals, um, some dynamic goals for us as a board, for you as a staff, and for Mike, so that we knew that our day to day was driving us somewhere. And so that's where the workforce committee came from. We stood up that workforce committee as a result of the strategic plan. The membership really kind of existed before, but we hadn't done a lot with it. And so we assigned new leadership to those committees and gave them new goals
Hmm.
and gave them new assignments for them to go continue their work and begin their work in the case of the workforce. And it gave us another opportunity. It gave us an opportunity, and just so that I don't leave government affairs out,
Hmm.
government affairs was there and had been doing a lot of heavy lifting
Right.
all along. So that was just a matter of reframing what was already really, really good work. So along with that, it gave us this outlook. We never really said that we were gonna put 10 years on it or 8 years on it, but we knew that as a result of doing this strategic plan and recognizing how good the work was, that we had an opportunity to continue that work again. For example, kind of a midterm strategic plan, and then another strategic plan, say in 5 to 6 years. And so what that caused us to do, and I'm going to be very specific about the us, myself, Mike
Hmm.
Adamson, and the executive committee of the board, which at the time included Bill Hanf, Chris Garberg, um, and Jamie Luster. That gave us the opportunity to look at Mike's contract. And so what we did as an executive committee is we we took this opportunity to say to Mike, Mike, rather than another 3-year contract, which had been historical uh, before Mike even, the president served under 3-year contracts. We feel like that the work that you have done so far in this first 3 years has been amazing, and we want to lock you into a longer term contract. What's your temperature on a 6-year contract? And Mike was warm to that idea, and as a result, uh, we signed Mike to a 6-year contract as opposed to a 3-year contract. And so the way that this plays into the strategic plan is because that rather than us having another 3-year contract negotiation with Mike, we pushed that negotiation out to 6 years, and it's given us an opportunity to focus on the midterm strategic plan. So it was an amazing time. It came together perfectly and seamlessly, and it's going to allow us for a good transition as the leadership grows within the staff of AEA, and as the board of directors change. The board serves three-year terms at a max. You don't have to serve
Hmm.
all 3 terms, but 3-year terms. And so that causes, renewed personnel on the board of directors. And so that gives us plenty of opportunity to grow that as well. So all that's to say, uh, Mike Adamson has done amazing work for this association. And the strategic plan that he initiated and brought to the association was perfectly timed, albeit he had the the pandemic uh,
Right.
fighting against him at every step, holding him back. But we found a way through. Um, and I should give some credit to Gary Joyce here, because Gary Joyce did that strategic plan effort
Hmm.
from overseas, right? He's in Europe,
Right.
and so the timing of those meetings were never convenient. But I say that this is this strategic plan that we've now finished and we're working under, is now going to lead us into those kind of midterm and then the next strategic plan, kind of right at the end of Mike's contract. Uh, One of the things that Mike said to me as we were finalizing his contract is that this isn't his last contract. Obviously, we want to bring him to another new contract after this 6 years. But it was really exciting for us as an executive committee to sign him rather than a 3 year to a 6 year, and sets us up perfectly for our next strategic plan initiatives.
Absolutely. And I want to follow up on something, and you touched on this just a moment ago a little bit. But, given your experience in aviation maintenance training, and of course, knowing that the AA serves a diverse memberships, obviously repair stations, but also the OEMs, the manufacturers, distributors. So, how do you see the AEA fostering an even stronger collaboration and an understanding between the manufacturers and the broader avionics service and support network?
It's a tough question, and our survey uh, results to the associate members and to the repair station members, regular members, uh, showed that we I think we would have I don't think it's a big secret that we would have liked to have seen some more participation. And our survey, we surveyed the repair stations about the associate members. And so our next survey is going to be to the associate members about the regular members. And I think we're going to find some opportunities here. We're we're looking to help find those opportunities today. I don't know. I don't know what that future holds. But we're going to find out. Tom and Chuck are doing an excellent job in that committee, but it's not easy work. So I would ask our members if they have some input on this. We absolutely want to hear from you. Tom and Chuck would love to hear your input. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them.
You bet. And once again, we are visiting with Mike Berryhill. He is the senior maintenance trainer with Cirrus Aircraft and the AEA's newly elected chairman of the board here on AEA Amplified, sponsored by Avionics News Magazine. And Mike, I'm going to go back one more time here to your convention speech in Phoenix, and you had asked the AEA members there in attendance to treat every interaction with a young person as a chance to invite them into the industry. Given that our hangars are behind a fence, which you mentioned, and that can be a barrier, what are some examples maybe of how our shops and our manufacturers can open the gate and eliminate some of those barriers for the next generation?
I At the speech, I kind of landed um, my thought at, let me hear from you. I'd love to hear the stories from the members about how they're interacting with young people. And I got the greatest email from Joe Hensley with Intercontinental Jet, and he's doing it through scouting.
Hmm.
And he shared with me some pictures. Absolutely amazing work. Going out and seeing young people in where they are, and but then also bringing them to uh, this association that he has a passion about. It's called scouting. And and I actually quoted one of the founders of the Boy Scouts in my speech. And so I think that actually got Joe thinking whenever I quoted Mr. Whitlock. But I I think there are a lot of opportunities. And Joe telling me his story about the Scouts uh, was amazing. I loved hearing this story. Um, Barrington Irving, who partnered with us on the skills competition, I mean, he is doing the hard work. he is going to those low income neighborhoods,
Hmm.
finding opportunities for kids that might not have ever had opportunities, and they are bringing them to vocational education. And I think that's another way that we as a membership can encourage young people, and that is this. I don't think there's a stigma around vocational education and blue collar work as there once was,
Hmm.
but I think that there has been in the past, and we need to continue to encourage young people that if college is not the right move for you, and I would never tell a young person not to go to college. I just that's not that's not the
Right.
way you lead a young person. But it wasn't right for me,
Hmm.
and so vocational education was what was right for me. And by the way, I never did go get a college degree, so I'm proof that this this thing known as a vocational education can truly be
Hmm.
beneficial and benefit you for a lifetime.
That's right.
But that's what Barrington's doing, is encouraging young people to vocational education. And to back to my thought, we can encourage young people to vocational education, and blue collar work, right? It doesn't have to be aviation maintenance. It doesn't have to be avionics technician. Obviously, we're in a shortage of those technicians, but encouraging young people to vocational education is one of the ways that we do that. I visited with somebody else at convention, um, Brian Smisek. I hope I said your name right,
Hmm.
Brian. He told me a story about his daughter's boyfriend. And Brian, forgive me if I didn't get that exactly right, but he shared with me that story. And so this is the opportunities, right? Is whenever you interact with these young people, offer them this opportunity to come and see what you do. And then if you don't get them inside the fence through your gate, that's okay. Encouraging them to vocational education and encouraging them uh, to go and get a skill or a trade. That I think that is the way that we do this, because one of the initiatives in the workforce committee. Do you see what I did there? I got it back to the
Yeah.
workforce committee. The the one of the things that the workforce committee is going to do is we're going to go try and find those people that aren't really happy in the vocation and the skill set that they're in, and show them that, say, diesel heavy mechanics, that translates into what we do. And so we go and find them, and we pick them from those industries and bring them into ours. And
Right.
so those are the opportunities.
Well,
The
and one way to do
opportunities that I see in this moment anyway. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And, one way I also might remind the AA members and all of our listeners too, that there's an excellent one-stop go-to resource that you can refer folks to when you're having those conversations with youth. If you can get them to aerocareers.net, there's a lot of information on there about scholarships, how to get involved in the industry, testimonials from career professionals, uh, military that might be transitioning into the workforce. And so if you can get them there, that would be a good start. Again, that's aerocareers.net. Mike, looking at the aviation industry at large, of course, aviation continues to evolve over time with advancements like sustainable aviation, autonomous flight. There are increasing cybersecurity concerns. So, what are some of the biggest challenges the industry at large will have to address in the future from your viewpoint?
I'm gonna keep it personal for just a minute and talk about Cirrus Aircraft. One of the challenges that we're facing right now is avgas.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that solution is. I commonly tell people that I'm an avionics expert, not a power
Right,
plant expert.
right,
I know enough to be dangerous in these conversations, so I won't get too far into the details. But I can tell you that avgas and the delivery of avgas at airports is beginning to hurt the industry, and so we have to find a way forward. And I don't know what that looks like. I know that Cirrus is actively working on solutions for for those airplanes that are at airports that are having a hard time getting that gas. We have to find a path forward for that. I think the other one of the other changes is autonomous flight. It was actually Rick Perry that made me think of this the very first time, and that was that the SF-50 is an autonomous vehicle. Now, that's to say that it's not all the time an autonomous vehicle. The SF-50 Division jet, single engine turbine that Cirrus sells with a parachute, by the way.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
that particular airplane has one of Garmin's avionics features called Safe Return
Hmm.
Emergency Auto Land. That product causes the airplane to be completely autonomous without any interaction from the crew or the pilot himself to take that airplane back safely back to an airport. The design idea, and I'm going to say something that everybody that's listening to this knows, but just in case they don't, let's say it this way: the parachute is designed to assist the pilot if the airframe or the power plant has trouble. Emergency auto land is designed so that a crew can navigate safely back to the airport in an airplane that's healthy, assuming that the pilot or the crew has trouble. So this is the difference between these two systems, but they're both safety systems. So Rick, back to my point, Rick was the one that made me realize that the SF-50 is an autonomous vehicle. At the push of a button, it becomes autonomous.
Hmm.
Well, this is a paradigm shift for everyone. And I didn't realize it until Rick made me realize it. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is optionally autonomous. And so then that got me to thinking, well, that means I think what comes next is optionally manned. Instead of optionally autonomous, optionally manned becomes kind of the next paradigm. And so an aircraft that is optionally manned of crew, I'm calling it crew, but it could also be completely empty, no passengers, just cargo. I think that's a paradigm shift that is going to be new to our industry, and AEA has a responsibility to help those uh, innovators innovate. The the aviation authorities, they're spring loaded to know whenever it comes to innovation, and I don't know, that might just be one man's opinion, but it doesn't. Whenever I look into the aviation authority as a whole, um, I, it looks to me like they're spring loaded to know, and so I say that because I want everybody to know that just is my opinion and not Cirrus's and not
Right.
AEA's. But my point is, they're we have to convince the authority that it's time to innovate in this segment, and then we have to help those innovators innovate, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. And so AEA, uh, certainly as a board of directors, we're looking at that today, and we've talked about it during the strategic planning for this next segment of our growth, and we're looking to find what that target looks like.
Well, Mike, before we let you go, it's time for our lightning round and our final four questions sponsored by Avionics News. This is just a fun exercise that allows the avionics community and the AAA members to get to know you a little bit better, more on a personal level. So we're just looking kind of for the first thing that comes to your mind and why you feel that way with our final four. So, question number one: I know aviation has allowed you to travel and make new friends all around the world. What is the most interesting place you've ever been and why?
I think it's the Great Wall of China. Um, I was struck by the idea that there's a Kentucky Fried Chicken where we parked the car. um, it, Beijing was a very interesting place, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to go and see China, and it's amazing people. It's absolutely an amazing place. Uh, I'll tell a story. Eric Yoon is one of the field service representatives that I worked with at Garmin. And so while we were in China, it was very common that I would do the slide and then in English, and then he would do the slide in the local language. And in this one instance, I had a slide where the Garmin system's completely broken, and there's yellow and red X's all over the screen, and so the joke goes, this is what Garmin G1000 looks like on Friday afternoon when you're trying to go home early. And I don't care who you are, that's a pretty funny joke, if, assuming that you tell it well. And so I did the joke and I handed it off to Eric, Eric did the slide, and the room is completely dead. It's like, Eric, wait a minute, hold on. I don't care. That's funny, man. Did you just not tell it funny? Do you need to tell it again? I have no idea what he said, but he did get a laugh out of them whenever he did this slide the second time. So anyway, there's a story about China.
Very, very good. All right, number two, who has been your most important professional mentor?
It's a wow. Well, I've mentioned them both. Rick Perry has been one of my mentors um, uh, from the very first time I met him. He's such a knowledgeable uh, technician.
Hmm.
His grasp of the legalese that governs us has never ceased to amaze me. And his ability to show up prepared, his ability to show up with something new virtually at every single event that I've ever seen him speak at. He's been a friend and truly a mentor because every single time I see him, every single time I talk to him, and every single conversation, he has some nugget, something new, and it's a reminder that the beauty of aviation, one of the many gifts of aviation, is that you're constantly learning. You're always learning. And the other one's Daryl Yelton. I met Daryl when I first went to work for Cirrus. I'm sorry, when I first went to work for Garmin, he was working for Cirrus, and he was a regional field service manager, and he was based in Lee Summit, not far from where
Hmm.
you guys are today. And Daryl is an engine guy, and so right away, I put Daryl in my Rolodex, as the engine guy. And if I had an engine question, Daryl was my call. And so Daryl has taught me so much about engines and certainly aviation along the way. But he's been generous. He's a generous, kind soul, and so he's taken me flying. And I mean, what better gift to offer another aviator than to just go break the surly bonds, right? So
Right.
anyway, I can't not mention Daryl again. And then of course my dad. My dad was not in sales, um, but he always kind of felt like that sales was where he got his start. And I say he wasn't in sales; he was the technical sales guy. He's told me many times that was what he brought to the table, different from everybody else. And one of the reasons I didn't want to be in sales is because I didn't want to be a commissioned salesman. I was afraid I might go hungry.
Yep.
And if you've ever seen me go at a cupcake or a slice of cake, I don't want to be hungry. My dad was a salesman and a technical salesman, and that gift of being able to tell something simple so that even I could understand it. I got that from him, and so definitely one of my mentors. And so there's probably been more along the way, and I just didn't think about them in this moment. And so if I've left you off, please don't hold it against me. You can reach out to me directly. I'll gladly hear your pitch.
All right. All right. Question number three. If you could go back in time to 1990 or thereabouts and give advice to a younger version of yourself who's just getting started in your aviation career, what would you tell yourself?
Get the college degree, and all of those other certifications along the way. I I didn't want to be a pilot. I knew that being a pilot wasn't what I was good at. And I say that, I mean, I've had plenty of opportunity to operate an airplane and make the airplane do what it's supposed to do in the air. But I didn't want that job of being a professional pilot. And so in my mind's eye, I was short-sighted about what those certificates could do for me later. And so because I had this short-sighted view of, well, I don't want to be a pilot, I don't need to get my pilot's license. And so I guess that's what I would tell a young person today. College is just another certificate, and it's one of
Mhm.
those certificates that, in retrospect, I should have gotten. I've had ample opportunity, and I just let it slip through my fingers. The pilot's license, it's another opportunity that I let slip through my fingers. And so, to put that in short, simple words, it would be go find those certificates, whatever they are. It's something new, and it shows the people that are around you and the people that are in your industry that you're ready to learn, you're willing to learn, and you're hungry to learn.
All right, fourth and final question. What have I missed? Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we've not covered today?
What a fun industry and what a great opportunity. I'm blessed to get to work with you and the staff and the members of the AEA. And I would invite them to search me out, come see me. You can find us at aea.net. The board of directors are on there. My email address is there. If there's something that I can do for you, if there's something that I can serve you, I hope you'd reach out. My job, my goal here is to serve this association and to serve Cirrus, and I feel very blessed at the opportunity to get to do that. So thanks for letting me bring that up.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to work with you to advance the association forward in the months and the years to come. So we appreciate you and all the work you're doing at Cirrus and with the AEA. And also, before we sign off, I would like to let our listeners know that registration is now open for the upcoming AEA regionals later this year. There will be 6 of them, 3 in the United States, 1 in Canada, 1 in the South Pacific region, and 1 in Europe. So find a location near you and join us for 2 days of training and professional development. You can learn more about that at aea.net/regionals. And also, of course,
at each one. Jeff, Cirrus will be at each one. We're planning on delivering training at each one this year.
Outstanding. And those links will also have, you can not only register, but you can book your hotel room as well. So it's not too soon to start doing that and be thinking about it. So also, certainly you can elevate your avionics career by taking training courses. We've got several over the next few months here, the spring and summer here in North America at AEA headquarters in Lee Summit, Missouri. So the AEA also offers virtual live classes if you're unable to travel. Seating is limited in those classes, so you can check out the entire course schedule, learn more about each of them, and enroll today at aea.net/training. And that is going to wrap it up for today. We hope you can join us again soon for another episode of AEA Amplified, sponsored by Avionics News. Thanks again to Mike Berryhill of Cirrus Aircraft for being our guest today. And until next time, for our producer-engineer Aaron Ward, this is your host, Jeff Hill, wishing you blue skies ahead. So long, everybody.